Welcome back to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast. My name is Steve Smith.
Mine's James Lloyd.
Very sultry voice there, James. have you
Dulcet
got,
tones.
have you got yourself a job in a call centre or something? What's going on with that? we are, we are both alcohol free coaches, and yeah, both fast approaching 5 years alcohol free, and yeah, loving every minute.
It's been
How's
pretty
your
damn.
how's your week been, James?
Yeah, it's been really nice actually. Been getting out, spring sprung and all that. I went out to Box Hill yesterday and shot some content for my new flourishing Instagram account. As you may know, I've done most of my social media activity on LinkedIn, but I've been gradually moving over to Instagram, and that requires a lot more video and stuff. So yeah, I
Yeah.
went up to Box Hill,
Take a
stuck
big
the
crew with you, did you? Was there a lot of you involved in all this filming? Was it how big's your crew?
and, hey, what are you offering to crew for me?
Yeah, yeah,
Will you
something like
record
that.
me? No, I just one man and his phone and a nice backdrop and some videos that I shot talking about how great it has been alcohol free and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was really nice. I'm looking excited for the summer, getting outside with the dogs. So yeah, really
That's a
good.
beautiful part of the world, Box Hill.
It is. You ever been to Box Hill?
I have been put to Box Hill,
Let me guess,
many
you've
many
run
a
up
time.
it.
I have run up it.
I knew you were gonna
In
say that.
fact, yeah, I have mixed memories of Box Hill. So anyone who doesn't know Box Hill's just outside Dorking in Surrey, and it's most of the people who live in Box Hill absolutely hate cyclists now for good reason because it was part of the London 2012 road race,
Oh,
and on the back of that, all of Surrey decided they wanted to take up cycling, and now you can't get up Box Hill without a queue of about 40 cyclists every time you want to go up there. But no, I love Box Hill, but the last time I went up Box Hill was at the end of the Winter Downs 200, and I was about 206 miles into my at the finish practically of my multi-day ultra that I did back in 2024. And that involved me having to run up the Box Hill steps, of which there are about 340, I think. 206 miles in. And when I say I ran up the steps, that's strictly not true. I think I was
crawled,
talking to the trees and hallucinating my
hallucinating.
way up the steps and groaning and moaning about how I just wanted this shit to be over. And then I crossed the finish line to a light applause of about three people and a massive anticlimax. But yeah, that was my
I've got to
last
say,
experience of Box Hill.
you're not selling the Iron Man lifestyle to
Well,
me.
that wasn't an Iron Man, thankfully.
Oh,
But
wasn't it?
no,
That was just a
no,
light jog.
that was just a 207-mile jog. Um,
Good
yeah,
God.
I've signed up for another Ironman, which also
Have you?
involves a hill.
You
Yeah,
surprised me.
I've
Where's
signed
that?
up to one called Slate Man, which is in June this year, and it is an Ironman in Snowdon. So it's going to be a bit bumpy. So I'm looking forward to that. So training starts, well, has started, shall we
Back
say?
in training.
Back
I
in
just got the
training.
rock, just got the Rocky music going off in my head. So.
You can I'll keep you updated on my journey, I'm sure, and bore you all to tears over the coming months. But yeah, looking forward to that. It's going to be great fun.
Brilliant. Well, I'm
So
going
yeah.
to. I booked a holiday to Croatia with my wife and my best friend and his wife. So I'm excited for that. We went to Austria together last year as a foursome. Not like that. That'd be a bit weird. But
Well, if you're
yeah.
going to do
So
it, do it in Austria.
exactly. Well, yeah. Um, so yeah, we're going to do that. We're going to Croatia. So we're excited for that.
Have you been before?
Not Croatia, no.
That's
So
lovely. Yeah.
we picked Croatia because everyone said it's absolutely lovely,
Mm.
and none of the four of us have been. So we landed on that. So
Whereabouts are you going? I
Croatia,
realise this is now just
Croatia.
I realise this is now just blending into a chat and a cup of tea.
So weather chat, tick. Holiday chat, tick. Who have we got on the pod this week, Steve?
So we have a huge guest this week, and unless you've been living under a stone or in a cave for the last 7 years, you will have heard of Sober Dave.
Wow. Now stop press. This is part of a double header because we have got a huge guest next week as well that you're not going to want to miss. But we're not going to speak about that for the moment. We've got Sober Dave on, and he's a bit of a legend.
Yeah, we'll keep next week under wraps. But yeah, it's such a pleasure to have Dave on the podcast this week. So those of you that don't know, which I can imagine is nobody, Dave is a sobriety coach. He's an author, speaker, and podcast host of the fantastic One for the Road podcast. And he kind of became known when he shared his alcohol-free journey when he originally went alcohol-free back in 2019, and now he works in the space and is a huge name and needs no introduction. And yeah, welcome to the podcast. Sober Dave, aka Dave Wilson.
Real
And
pleasure, mate. It's lovely
it's
to
great.
join you both.
Yeah, I've been following your work for some time, Dave, and it's really lovely to have you on. I think there's a few things we want to kind of talk about today, but I think as you do with yours, let's start and go back a little bit to the beginning and learn a little bit about your story and where you're at nowadays, really,
Yeah,
and we'll go from there.
sure, mate. I'll keep it brief because a lot of people have heard my story, and I know we're going to cover something different today. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I grew up in a place called Croydon. A lot of people know it. And it was back in the 60s I was born, and my dad was a lorry driver, and my mum worked in a factory, and there wasn't a lot of money. So it was always second-hand clothes and, never the latest trainers or anything like that. And it was all right actually growing up. It was felt quite safe. But then when I got to about 11 or 12, I realized my mum and dad there's a lot of arguing and slamming doors and stuff. And then not like nowadays where if you move, you have a family meeting and you sit down and talk about the area, the schools and, how the kids are feeling. We were just told we were moving
Mm,
and we moved area. So I had to say goodbye to friends that I've had since being a little boy, and it was quite a jolt to me. And I moved to this rough area and started school in the second year of secondary school. And like everyone had made their own friendship groups, and I was terrified. And I wasn't really streetwise then or, down with the kids. And I was just petrified. I made a friendship with this guy called Kev, who was just lovely, and we used to bugger about with albums in the bedroom, like mixing and stuff. We ended up doing a disco together, actually, a disco,
Yeah,
but we were
disco.
we were DJs, right? And
Showing your age there, Dave.
yeah, I know we used to do a disco, and but then like a few of the like the what I'd like frame as the tougher boys in the class kept coming round and knocking on the door. And I used to say to my dad, I'll tell him I'm out or tell him I'm ill and that, because I was kind of terrified of them a little bit.
mm,
They're always the ones up the shops drinking and smoking and having fights, and it just wasn't me. But one day I got up and there was a letter on the table for me, and it was from my mum. And I opened it up and it said, Dave, I've left your dad. I'll be in touch. And that was it, right?
well,
14 years old. And like, we had no internet, no social media, nothing, no mobiles, and I didn't know what that meant. Like I'd be in touch, and it devastated me. Like why didn't she sit me down and talk to me, like, and or tell me what's going on? And a month later, I heard giggling downstairs, and I thought, oh, my mum's come back, and it was another woman. My dad had met another woman. He'd been on like back in the old days. They used to advertise in papers and stuff like that, and he met a new woman, and she basically didn't like me being around. And something was said one night, and I looked at my dad for him to support me, and he didn't. He just walked out the room, and I remember it now. I felt the most rejected kid in the whole world, and I left the house, burst out crying, and it wasn't long after that that I started mixing with these rough lot and drinking and smoking. And they said to me after a couple of beers, actually, mate, you're not a dickhead. You're actually all right. You're quite funny. And I realised then that I wasn't the fighter. I was the funny one in the group. So I felt I had an identity. I fitted somewhere. And it went on from there. And going from my teens and 20s, I was always the one that used to get pissed more, but it was kind of social drinking, like work hard, play football Saturday and Sundays, get pissed Friday night, Saturday night, and never at home or anything like that. But in my late 20s, I started going to a local pub, and that changed things. Like I was got a reputation really quickly for being a quick drinker, and they nicknamed me Glugs because I would glug it down. And one day, someone said to me, "Are you an alcoholic?" And like I'm quite sensitive, and I was like, "No, what are you talking about? I just like a beer and that." And I went home and I thought, "Am I?" Like I started looking it up, and it's like, God, well, I am drinking every day, and I am like getting pissed a lot and stuff. So I started cutting it down in the pub, but buying it in the off license and going home with it. So it looked on the outside that actually I was all right and I sorted myself
mm,
out, but I was going home and then drinking Diamond White. And I remember in the office they had this deal on, which was buy four get four free, and Diamond White was like 8.4%, like battery acid. Like you
Mm.
would wake up with diabolical heartburn and like a different hangover. It was rank. And then I started buying wine because the supermarket started offering like 10 quid for 3 bottles of wine. And I thought, well, that's a cheap couple of nights in. But it wasn't long before I started drinking 3 bottles of wine. Because once, as you probably know, you start getting out into the second bottle, and it wasn't long before actually I'd have one out the third. And before I knew it, I was drinking 3 bottles of wine a night. And I was putting on loads of weight. Then I moved away from the pub, bought this little cottage, and I ballooned. My weight had ballooned, and I was quite depressed actually. And I remember I was 40, and I googled what alcohol has the least calories, and up popped vodka. And I was never a spirit drinker ever, so I thought I'd try it. So I tried half a bottle of vodka, and it went in about an hour max. So I started buying a bottle, and that used to go before it was time to pass out, basically. So I started buying a liter, and before I knew it, I was drinking a liter a night. And when I like got to the weekend, I was drinking more because I had more time. Like I wouldn't work at the weekend, so I would start drinking at 12 because the pub's open at 12, the football's on at 12. No one's here to judge me and whatnot. So I started drinking like cans of Stella at 12. And then I'd think, oh, do you know what? I'm a bit bloated. I might have a bottle of wine, and then get stuck into the vodka. So by Monday morning, I was absolutely hanging, like week in, week out, failed relationships. And eventually, I got asked to do an interview for a TV show called DIYSOS because I was in the carpet trade. And
Right.
my brain went to, oh my God, how can I turn up there? It means I won't be able to drink the night before. And I was honestly contemplating whether to do it or not just because of the hangover. I did it. They asked me back the next day, did that, and I put it on my website. And then 2 weeks later, ITV contacted me and said, we're looking for a guy to be on 60 Minute Makeover. Do you want to come for the interview? Again, oh my God. Went for the interview, got the job, and they said, right, Monday you're in Coventry doing a makeover. And I turned up on the Sunday where they was all going out for food in that, and I thought, oh my God, I'm gonna have to like really taper my drinking. But as it happened, all the blokes on the show loved a drink. You know, they was all getting pissed. So I thought, this is this is my kind of style. Do you know what I mean? And I kind of did that for 3 or 4 years of like 4 or 5 months on working on the show, going out clubbing, coming home 4 in the morning, getting up at 6. Like, I don't know how I did it. And then I met someone we did the makeover for, and it was like a whirlwind relationship. And she was diagnosed with cancer a day before we were due on our first date. And I'd been drinking, and she gave me the opt out, and I'm a lover, not a fighter. And I was like, I'd be all right. Tuesday, first date, chemo ward, Parkside Hospital in Wimbledon. And that's how we kind of fell in love, you know, like it was like that trauma bonding kind of thing of, you know, she's got to get better and then we can have a wonderful life. And, you know, I'd rub her feet in the hospital and put her cold cap on. And like we grew to know each other through that, really, her illness. And I ended up selling my house and moving in, and she had 4 kids, and I just didn't think about any of it because I was always drunk. Sounds awful, but I'm being honest.
Mhm.
Um, but you know that we were in love, and it was real at the time. But I was also drunk a lot of the time. So when I moved in, I went cold turkey basically because she didn't really know the extent of my drinking. Because as you know, we're like masters of disguise. And I used to say to her, like, ring me before 7 because I'm going to put this really great film on and it's 3 hours and I'll probably go to bed straight after. So she wouldn't ring me after the film and I'd be literally slurring like the clappers, you know. So I got away with it until I moved in. And the first 2 weeks was hell because I was literally drying out. And then I started introducing, oh, should we have a glass of wine tonight? What, on a Tuesday? Like, because she wasn't really a drinker. And then I started introducing it even more. Then I started getting drunk, and then the real me started appearing in the relationship. And then the cracks started to show. And then after that, it was disaster. Like, honestly, the relationship was really struggling. I ended up down in Eastbourne. Like, a lot of people have heard this, but I ended up in Eastbourne for 4 or 5 days, sleeping rough on the beach and just getting paralytic. And the doctor double dosed my antidepressants and didn't even ask whether I was drinking or not. I lost my mum that year. She died. The builder nicked 25 grand. So that whole of 2018 was absolutely a disaster. But all I kept doing was saying, I can't sort this out. I can't keep going on like this because I was literally pissed all the time and
Mm.
holding down a job and trying to keep my marriage together, sorting my mental health out. And then it got to Christmas and I realised her family had limited the alcohol on the table. Like there was 10 of us around the table and there was one bottle of wine. And I'm like, what is this? But I realised it was an intervention. New Year came, terrible. I saw a picture of me and my wife, and I just look, it's so ill, like 20 stone, like bloated, all red blotches on my face. And then I got a message from a mate who obviously saw what was going on, and he said, "Why don't we consider stopping drinking together for 3 months to see how you are in your health and your marriage and everything?" He didn't say, mate, you look disgusting. You need to stop drinking. He framed it in a way of he would join me. And I just thought, what's he talking about? I can't stop for 3 days, let alone 3 months. But throughout that day, I started to visualize what life might be like. What will my marriage be like? What will my job be like? What will my health be like? What will my sleep? You know, all these things. And I started to get excited and I went to see him that night. And I mean, he's never in either. And he was standing there, and it was like the voice of Jesus coming down on me. It's like, this is the chance, mate. Take it now. And I shook his hand and said, I'm in. And that was the 7th of Jan 2019. I've never had a drink since. It, it was like because he could have said no, I'm not in tonight, and England were playing that night as well, and I just could know well, weren't meant to be then, and I might be dead now if it wasn't for that. But it was just that divine timing. And people say, was that spontaneous sobriety? And I go, no, because I've been telling myself for months before that I've got to sort it out. So I was planting little seeds all the time of you can't keep going on like this. You're going to kill yourself. What's your son going to feel like? And all these things. So it looked like spontaneous sobriety, but it wasn't. Yeah, and that was 7 years ago now. So hopefully I've made that as quick as I can. A lifetime of drinking.
Well, no, I mean, thank you, Dave, because that what stands out for me mostly is firstly just when you were describing that, how that just escalates in such a way, and throughout that conversation, how you're even relaying to us, you describing how you were finding reasons for this, reasons for that, and you mentioned Diamond White. How that stuff is even allowed, I don't know, because it clearly has one particular target audience.
Yeah.
But then how,
Yeah.
you then start to think, well, my weight's ballooning, and in the nicest possible way through your social media. I have seen those earlier photos, and
Mm.
I could see how that was impacting you. But then you're rather than the alcohol's the issue, what can I drink that's actually going to save the calories, and that
Yeah.
justification through it, and then kind of coming through to Eastbourne and having read your book as well and understanding what those few days of living on the streets. And often people talk about rock bottom moments, but do you feel it was that to you, or do you feel it was more along the lines of, a kind of threshold moment it's often referred to, where you suddenly, whilst it wasn't spontaneous sobriety, it was just that realization of just how bad it had got?
Mm. I mean, I had several rock bottoms. I
Right.
mean, I could spend the whole hour on this podcast listing the rock bottoms I had. So it wasn't that. It was a catalogue of events and what it was doing to me and the people around me as well. My mental health was shot, like
Right.
literally shot. My anxiety was sky high. As I say, my weight, I would put my socks on in the morning and I would come up out of breath because the sheer weight around the middle of me would just crush my lungs. You know what I mean? And I remember I developed this cough, and I don't know how it was related, but I would literally cough my guts up every single morning, and stuff would come out in the sink. And the neighbours used to say to my wife Emma, like, "Is he all right? He sounds really ill." And so everything had gone wrong. My blood pressure was 180 something by 125. The doctor said you were a walking heart attack. Like everything, I had acid reflux that I remember being out for a meal in Rye in this really beautiful pub, and I got up and I said I feel ill, and as I got up, I vomited pure acid, like it come out like The Exorcist, like in the middle of this pub at 1 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon with everyone around me, and it's like I am actually really ill,
Mm,
and other bodily functions I won't go too into detail, but it would just happen out of the blue, and it's like I am literally rotten,
mm,
and it was almost like you've got one opportunity to turn your life around. What are you going to do? Like, are you going to do it or not? Because if you don't, you've had it, that kind of
mm,
thing.
mm.
I think it's such an amazing story of hope as well because we don't do a video podcast, but you look absolutely fantastic, Dave.
Oh,
Obviously
thanks, mate.
you are really are the picture of health. I mean,
Oh,
it's
thank you.
amazing that you can go from what you've just described to where you're at now. So I think anyone who's listening who's thinking, I'm not a middle lane drinker because traditionally we talk a lot about middle lane drinking, which is Steve and I's experience. We weren't full blown alcoholics, but it,
Mm,
it just does speak to what is possible for anyone. You're real testament to that. I'd just like to rewind back a little bit when you spoke earlier on about the incident with your dad. Was that initial rejection? Do you think that was the kernel of really what the trauma that really kind of caused this whole unraveling over the course of decades? Do you think that's where it all began?
I do think so. I mean, I was never in an environment where alcohol was present growing up. So my dad used to make his homemade wine, and we used to like look at that little bubble thing on the demijohn go round and stuff.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I I think it was the trauma of my mum leaving. Um, that felt like rejection because if your mum can leave you, you blame yourself. Like, is it my fault? You're not emotionally intelligent enough at that age to work it all out, right?
Mm,
But it was then when my dad met someone else, like I used to stay out of the way, and the boiler had broken. So I was up in my box room, and all I had was a record player and a wardrobe in my, but it was like a tiny little room, listening to giggling downstairs. And I had an act of rebellion where I was like, sod this, I'm not going to freeze my tits off all night again. I'm going to go down because there's a gas fire downstairs, right? And I just sat like an act of rebellion. And I could hear her tutting and like huffing and that. And I said, what's wrong? And she went, oh, it'd be nice if me and your dad had a little bit of time together like that. And I looked at dad for him to go, hold on a minute, he lives here, he's my son. And he didn't know how to handle it,
mm,
and he went in the other room, and that was then that I felt my mum didn't want me, and now my dad doesn't want me,
Mm,
right? And I think that really rocked me, and then what I needed was the connection, and I just thought any connection is going to help, and that's when I went up the shops with these lads, and they were, handing change to the grown ups that they'd either nicked out their dad's pockets or down the back of the sofa. I think it was Castlemaine or something. I wouldn't have drank later on, a weak lager. But it kind of gave me that like buzz, that little sort of like confidence, and we all talk about. And all of a sudden, when they said, actually, you're the funny one, I fitted into it. I wasn't the fighter. I wasn't this, wasn't that. I was the funny one. And it gave me a purpose, a sense of
mm,
belonging. And I
mm.
think that's what I hooked onto. So, really, in hindsight, alcohol equaled being accepted.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's so often the case going back to the similar ages, but going back to drinking those early stages, it's that kind of connection, isn't it? It's all that drinking up the park with your mates and
Mm,
or whatever it happens to be. But I mean, it really is a fascinating story, and obviously, so that was 2019 where it all came to a
mm,
to a head.
yeah.
where did you go from there? What does life look like over the last, well, what are we on now? 7 years now, I suppose,
Yeah,
since you,
7 years.
yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah, in the beginning, I threw myself into exercise as we all do. My mate Piers, who had said to me, join me. We had two turbo trainers in his garage, plonked the bike wheels on it, and there was this app. I can't remember the name of it now, but
Swift.
Swift, that's it. And we kind of race each other. So that was an hour a day, 6 a.m. till 7 a.m. And then I wasn't like likely to have a bacon sandwich before work. I would have something more healthy. And I started feeling quite positive, and I would go to bed early. I would eat early, go to bed, and watch. Ironically, I used to watch Breaking Bad on my iPad because it went on forever, didn't it? Like
I
season
did.
after season, and that got me through the window of my cravings. So by the time I'd finished two episodes, I passed it, right? So I started losing a little bit of weight, and people were saying, "Oh, you look well, Dave," rather than "you look fucked," basically.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I got to a few months in, and like people were messaging all the time, and I started to like feel like, who am I then? Like, because I've been drinking for 40 years, that was my brand. That
Mm.
was like Glugsy or Dave the Carpet on 60 Minute Makeover. He loves a beer. And I even visualised my tombstone as he loved a beer, that boy. And, all my mates sobbing around the graves, like thinking, oh, we ain't going to get pissed with him anymore. Weird, weird mindset. And I started wondering who I was and what it would mean being sober forever, because I think the initial thing you get like a high because you can't believe you're doing it.
Mm.
Like, you genuinely, you can't. Oh my god, I've had a week without drinking. I've never done that in my whole life, kind of thing. And then I started to get a bit edgy and nervous, and it's like, God, like, is this it then? I hit a bit of a wall with it, and I started to wonder, who am I without alcohol? It's like a death of a relationship, like, and now I'm out on my own. And the way I kind of frame it is like, if I was in prison for 40 years and I've been let out, I'm so institutionalized in prison that it'd be so much easier for me to go back in. And because I know all the people, I know who runs the wing, and I know when the pool table's free, and I know when meal time, it's easier to go back in there than move forward and start a new life. So I started looking at who I was, and it was scary. Like I didn't really know what my core values were, or I actually, one of the biggest surprises was I realised I was actually quite shy. So when I started drinking at 14, I become this leery little shitbag, really. But I I was shy at 14, and it's almost like 40 years had halted that development. And when I stopped drinking, I realised how shy, and that was one of the biggest things, because going to events and that and turning up without pre-drinks and that, well, I found a real struggle. And I remember a couple of times I didn't even go in, I just went home again, you know.
Mm.
And I remember that with AA. I tried AA in the beginning, it didn't work out. But the amount of times I went to walk in and then walk past, like I was just looking at the church. Oh, that's a nice church. And then I got in the car and drove home again. So, yeah, I had to overcome that. And what else it did was highlight all the things in my life that really didn't align with me, like friends, social activities, and my marriage.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because when you start drinking at, in our teens, like we pretty much all do, you don't really get to develop naturally as the person that you're supposed to be. You kind of go off on this kind of tangent into somebody else, and yeah, I can relate to what you're saying there. And with regards to, I always used to think that I was, super social, and I've been alcohol free 4.5 years, and really it's in the last year that I've started to think, actually, maybe I'm not actually that social. I'm more of an introvert, or
Mm,
you start to think, well, yeah, who am I exactly? And it's almost like learning the whole thing all over again.
mm.
This might sound like a bit of a stupid question, Dave, but do you wish that you'd never drank, or has it the fact that you've been through what you've been through has helped you arrive where you are now?
Mm.
Somebody who has tremendous purpose in their life, knows exactly who you are, and you're in a really great place. Is that almost like a necessary evil that you had to go through to get to where you are now? How do you view those drinking years?
I think that's a great question. And I think also we got to remember that it's not always bad. You know, we frame it as, oh my God, my life was ruined. And but I've had some incredible experiences being on holiday with the lads and the good
Mm.
old Butlins days, you know, down in Minehead and stuff like that. You know, I've had some right laughs. But the trouble is, I think what changed it is when I started drinking indoors and I started isolating
Mm.
and, you know, becoming a recluse and going within myself. It stopped being social and it started becoming dependent drinking indoors on my own, was where it changed. But in answer to your question, I don't regret any of it because I genuinely feel my purpose now is to be exactly where I am in my life, to experience a life without it because I've had 40 years with it. So I'm so grateful for most things in my life. Even waking up in the morning, I took my dog Rose out this morning at 7:30, and I could hear the cockerels making a racket and the bird song. And like, I live kind of in the country, so I was like, God, what a beautiful start to the day. Do you know what I mean? Like listening to the bird song and no one
Mm.
really about and the light
Fine.
coming up and it. I don't want it to sound wanky, but I genuinely felt grateful for it. Um, and I feel grateful that I've experienced this and I can, by my podcast or book or my coaching or whatever it is, like my Instagram, reach out to people who are struggling and can relate, like you guys, you know, doing your
Mm.
podcast and
Mm.
being coaches and that. Like we're there, and I find these days there's so many different ways of doing it. Where back in the day there was just AA, and that is a success for a lot of people. But I think now there's lots of many ways to string a cat,
Mm.
and it's brilliant. You know, it's such a more open conversation about being alcohol free than it used to be. You
Mm.
Yeah.
know, I think the work we're all doing is actually beginning to smash the stigma because you go into a pub now and you say, I was in London last week and my mate asked for a lemonade and I asked for a lime and soda. And there's not didn't bat an eyelid. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like what
Yeah. Yeah.
couple of geezers going into a pub and you want a lemonade and lime and soda. Like in the old days, it's like they'd just give you a look, wouldn't they? But now I
Yeah.
just
Mm.
think it's more normalized, really. So, yeah, I don't regret any of it at all. I feel all the hangovers and all the like the Eastbourne thing and stuff has given me great resilience in life and strength to handle anything. And you need that as well when you're sober because it doesn't just end with you stopping drinking. That's the beginning.
Yeah, we've
Yeah.
we've had that conversation ourselves about, I wouldn't change it. I definitely wouldn't change it. And I don't think it sounds wanky at all. Genuinely, I think for me, and I can hear through my headphones now. I'm out in the country as well. This is the best time in the world to be sober in spring because I was out with the dogs, the sun coming up, and suddenly everything's springing. Um, it's an amazing time, but obviously, you know, we often hear that everything's all rosy when we stop drinking, and there's no doubt about it. Life improves, we know that, but life also can deal its fair share of shit, right?
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what I said earlier was like I started looking at my marriage and we just weren't the same. Things changed and we wanted different things. Our values were different.
Mm,
Our parenting styles were different. She had 4 kids, you know, she had triplets and that. And she was quite laid back. And I was, you know, constantly being called a Victorian dad, but I believed in boundaries and I believed they needed them. And we ended up, I left after I think I was 2 or 3 years sober and ended up living in a bed sit somewhere and then a hotel down the coast. And I've moved 7 times since getting sober, and we all know how stressful that is, you know. And then I got into another relationship that ended like virtually at flickers of switch. And I've got through all of that. And people say, well, didn't you feel like having a drink? Like, and my answer to that is no, because I don't want to. Like, I genuinely don't want to. It's not about, I mean, we could all drink now,
mm,
but I've got to the stage in my life I just don't want to because it doesn't add anything to my life at all. Not one single thing. In fact, it would destroy me within 10 minutes of having that drink because I know where that would go. So I just look at it like I'm allergic to alcohol, and that works for me. I just kind of like a nut allergy. I just think, if you've got a nut allergy and there's a trace of something in a sandwich, you eat it in your curtains. So I look at it
Mm.
like booze. If I have one drink, that's it. I'm done, and that works for me. It might not work for everyone, but it's a non-negotiable now. I just don't. I'm not interested. It's dead to me, which is ironic because we all work in this industry. Do you know what I mean? Like we
Yeah.
talk about it every single day.
So
Mm.
you
You know,
don't feel any sense of loss then, Dave?
I did in the beginning. Yeah, I'm being honest. Yeah, and I don't think we talk about it enough, like the grief around it, because I always say it's like being in a relationship, like whether you want to
Totally.
frame it like the secretary at work or the bit on the side, because like I used to hide it, I used to lie about it, I used to get excited about having it, and in the morning have the regret. So it felt like an affair. And so when I gave it up, there was a sense of loss because it was a coping mechanism for me. It was like I relied on it to get me through each day, and rewards, like we all know the good day, bad day, any old day, but every single day, like if I struggled coming home and the kids were fighting or there was mess or my wife had the I thought, it's all right though, I can get pissed tonight, it's all right. So when I took that out of it, I had to actually deal with it,
Mm,
like on many levels, like emotionally, physically, like there was so much I had to accept and manage and like getting through the week, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, we used to have a lot of people over for dinner, just so we could drink. Basically, the amount of times I invited people over just so it justified me getting pissed, and at 5 o'clock I'm passed out upstairs on the bed. You know,
mm,
um, to reframe that to actually still having people over where they're going to be drinking, and you're going to sit there thinking, all right, I'm on a lime and soda or a coke, and everyone's getting jolly, and I actually feel a bit bored. Uh, Manage that as well. So it's like you just have to have a plan, don't you? And every day work out how to get. It's like a bloody TV game show at the beginning because you have to have a strategy to get through.
Mm.
for sure, yeah.
Mm.
I think it's looking at it as a trade-off though as well, isn't it? In terms of, everything in life's a trade-off and y- what you're talking about there as regards to, people coming over and you're drinking a lime and soda. Yeah, okay. So you can't have everything. Sometimes those events just aren't going to be suitable anymore. You're not we sometimes talk about, don't go to the pub for 6 hours at a time anymore. But I don't really miss that because I look at what I've got on the flip side, and it's just
Mm,
completely incalculable in
yeah.
terms of what you're getting. One thing I wanted to just go back to a second ago that we've spoken about, you mentioned there about hiding how much you're drinking and alcohol, and that's something that I think is a real signpost to people of if that's happening, the direction of travel that's going on. I never considered myself to be somebody who had an alcohol use disorder as such. Well, it's a scale, isn't it? But an alcoholic, if you like. But I definitely can recall times where I was hiding the amount I was drinking, and I think that's a real telltale sign. And I
Mm,
think if people can recognize and be honest with themselves that is something they're doing, that's a real massive red flag. Rather than sitting down and googling, "Am I an alcoholic?"
Mm.
If you're hiding it,
mm.
from
Yeah, I
your loved
agree.
ones, that's a real sign. I
I
think.
agree, and a lot of that's around shame actually, because it's like you feel ashamed that you need more than maybe like you used to. My wife used to say, "I don't understand why we can't share a bottle of wine," and on a Friday night, and I'd say I'd rather have nothing than share a bottle of wine,
Mm,
Mm.
because half a bottle of wine for me would just be like a starter for me. It'd be like, right now we can get drunk, you know.
Yeah.
But we all know that drinking alcohol can be like cumulative, right? So where you might start off having a couple of glasses of wine, and then you're sneaking in the third one, which is, free pouring at home is a bottle, isn't it? Because you're doing large glasses. Um, and the way we talk about it sometimes needs to be looked at. Because I remember interviewing someone, and she said, "Yeah, I'll just have a couple of glasses of wine with dinner," like, and the way she framed it made it look like nothing. But I said to her, like, so are they like free home pouring glass? Yeah, yeah, yeah. So large glasses, probably, yeah. So when we added up the amount of units, it was way more than double the recommended units per week. So, but the way
Mm.
she framed it made it look quite
casual.
normalised.
Mm,
Do
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Just a
mm,
couple of glasses, then I don't drink after that. But
mm.
Yeah.
probably two-thirds of a bottle of
At least
wine,
half bottle, yeah.
and that's if she was telling the truth, and we know what we're like with it. So I think we need to be honest with ourselves. And if we think, I haven't got a problem with drink, all right, go for a month without it then. Oh, why? I don't want to do that. Like, I haven't got a problem. It's like really asking yourself a few questions. Could I take a month off and it wouldn't bother me? Then potentially you haven't really got a problem, right? If there's
Yeah.
resistance there, then maybe think, well, maybe either I have or I'm developing a problem and it's time to rein it in a little bit.
Well, it's still a form of
Eh,
dependence, isn't it? You know, if you can't go out socially without having a drink, then you have a form of dependence on
Yeah.
alcohol. And
Yeah.
for I think probably fair to say that for awful lot of people, they can't they don't feel comfortable in a social situation without alcohol. And I think
Yeah.
part of that as well is this we talk a lot about sort of social anxiety. Being able to go somewhere and feel uncomfortable in the first 10 minutes is a very natural human response.
Yeah.
Kids do that, right?
Yeah.
Take them to a kids party,
Absolutely.
they're like a bit nervous, a bit quiet,
yeah.
and then they get into it, and that's part of our defense system. But we've got so used to, we learn as teenagers that the solution to that is to have a drink or to
Yeah.
preload before we even
Yeah.
go out,
Absolutely.
and it's almost, again, what we're saying, it's almost like relearning that that's just life. You're going to be a little bit feel a bit uncomfortable when you meet new people or in a room of people you
Yeah.
don't know. That's natural. That's life. There's nothing
Yeah.
unusual
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And it is that sliding scale, isn't it? I mean, when you talk there about hiding alcohol, I didn't necessarily hide alcohol, but I certainly knew that as my drinking increased, define where hiding alcohol starts, because, and I hear this from a lot of men that I'm kind of work and coach with as well, it starts often around that cooking. And you know what, like you said at dinner time, well, okay, yeah, we just had a couple of glasses of wine with dinner. But you know what, I was actually cooking before the dinner came out, and I managed
Mm.
to slip a couple of glasses in before dinner or whatever. And then it just started to escalate from there. And it's that sliding scale. And then,
Yeah.
and that was in hearing in your earlier story how quickly that can quickly escalate if allowed to kind of run free. And
Yeah. I mean, like
Mm.
Sunday's a prime example, doing a roast, and she'd say, oh, I'm going to get some bits. Do you want anything? I could never ask her to get the amount of alcohol that I wanted.
yeah,
So I go, do you know what? You have a rest. I'll go and get it all. And I used
yeah,
to 150 quid in Sainsbury's, right? Get a leg of lamb and really like romanticize the day up and get nice desserts and that. So I could come back at midday and I'd say to her, oh, do you want a glass of wine? And she'd go, well, not long had breakfast. And I go,
Yeah.
well,
Oh, yeah.
we can have a lovely and I'd open a couple of beers, right? And then it'd be like, right, I smell of alcohol already now, so I can get away with it. And they'd be like, as I say, like before it time to carve the lamb, I was completely gone. You know what I
mm,
mean? And so when I stopped drinking, that Sunday roast ceremony had to change because there was too many associations with drinking. So I would get up early and I make a big fat lasagna for the family and then go out on my bike or something. So that's out the way. And I didn't have to go through that, that stage of 12 o'clock is when I normally drink and sitting there biting your fingernails. So you have to change so many things in the beginning, don't you? And that's what I say about having a plan is essential, I think.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
So fast forward a bit then, Dave. So we one of the things we don't talk probably enough about on this pod is what it's like when you get to 6 months, a year and a half, 2 years. You mentioned earlier about what I'd call finding joy in the ordinary. Where you go out, it's a spring day, and you're with your dog, and just noticing things that you sort of didn't notice before. What's your thoughts on that kind of later sobriety period? 6 months to a year.
I think it's difficult to compare with, like, we're not all the same, right? And we all got different things we like, and we got different levels of fitness. And some people like to watch films and go to the cinema. Others like to, like Steve, go and do ultra marathons, or I've done
Nutter.
climb mountains and stuff like that. So I think you need to find your niche of what you enjoy doing. Um, but and we're all in different relationships. We've all got different attachment styles growing up and stuff. So it's a hard one to say in general. But I think for me, the essential part of my later sobriety was really getting to know who I was and feeling comfortable in my skin as a human being, to lift my head high. And if I was confronted by anyone, I would feel comfortable in my response For instance, like my last move, my seventh move, the guys delivered it all and said, "Oh, you've got a lovely little local pub. You'll be out there tonight meeting all the regulars and that." And I go, "Yeah, I could pop up there. I'll see how it goes." Like, not, well, actually, sit down and I'm going to tell you my entire story. Have you got 3 hours? You know, so
Yeah.
I'm so comfortable in my skin now that I'm quite humble. Um, I've stopped really going to a lot of like sober events now. I kind of feel like I've done that, and for a friend in that, I might go along or whatnot, but I kind of forge my own lifestyle now, and I know what I like to do. I know what I like not to do. Um, but there are challenges, and I think year one changes to year two and year three. We grow, we develop, we get older, and I just think it's important that we explore who we are, but we don't always have to dig right deep down into the trauma if you've got any, because one, you need the right person to support you, and two, sometimes it can really hold you back. Um, so I think we have to be careful when we talk about childhood trauma or big T's, little T's, because I know of people that it's actually upset them that much that they start drinking again. So I think we have to be mindful of a lot of the coaches out there now, because there's no kind of rules around any of it, are there? And I just think we need to be careful how we coach people, because we can dig things up when
Yeah.
people don't need them dug up, basically,
Yeah.
and that worries me really. But personally, for me, I've looked at my attachment style, which was always anxious attachment style, which once you start looking at that, it's fascinating because you really learn a lot about yourself and where that comes from. So basically, my mum left me at 14. And then I got married quite young, and she left me for my brother in law. So I had this whole kind of framing around women just leave me. So when I'd
Mm.
meet a woman, I would cling on to them, and I'd be really needy and I'd be jealous because I wouldn't want them to leave me, that kind of thing. And that kind of shaped my life. And I learned all about that when I got sober. And I learned now how to adjust myself so I'm secure in a relationship. So it's finding out who you really are was the big thing for me, in my now 7 years of sobriety, that I can just feel comfortable in my own skin. That is a really long answer to that question, wasn't it?
It's a great answer though.
Yeah,
Where do you think that started to shift for you? Because equally, myself and James are similar times alcohol free. In fact, there's only about a month or so in it, but we're both coming up towards 5 year. And I definitely feel like that now. Even though, I coach, even though we do this podcast, and of course love doing all of that, I don't want my identity anymore necessarily to be Steve that doesn't drink.
yeah,
I'm starting, well, I wouldn't say starting, I would say I'm fairly well along that journey now of wanting to be, actually, this is me now.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is who
yeah.
I am. I'm finding, it's hard to do that when you do what
It's
you do for a living,
it
but
is.
Y-
yeah, I definitely can relate to that.
And when you're called Sober Dave as well, because that is my branding, like that's my
Yeah,
identity.
yeah,
When you go online, it's everywhere. If you put my name in, it's hardly anywhere, right?
yeah.
So I've actually carved out my whole identity about I was Dave Glugs, Glugsy, the big drinker, and now I've flipped it 180 to Sober Dave, and it's like I want to be known for me being Dave,
Mm.
right? And
So do you,
it's hard.
sorry to cut in there, Dave. That's really fascinating. So I was going to ask you where, the sober Dave came from. Was it something that you set out to do, or something that you've grown? But is it also something that you're not really all that keen on?
It's an interesting one, right? Because in the beginning, I was something like on Instagram, this is Dave today, or something. This is Sober Dave. I couldn't get any name or whatnot. And this guy in America was called Sober Dave. And I looked at his account and it had like 114 followers. So I messaged him and I said, would you sell that name to me? And he said, yeah. And I think I paid him $150 for that, because I remember being on a podcast and she couldn't quite say what my Instagram handle was, right? So I thought I need to change that. So I bought it and become Sober Dave. And it was easy, wasn't it? And it's now my brand, like, oh, Sober Dave, Sober Dave, Sober Dave. But there is part of me now that I just want to be David Wilson. I'm being honest now.
Yeah.
and it served me well. It has served me well. And my coaching, David Wilson coaching. So there's the brand there, but there's a brand here. And I've even got a number plate that says sober. So if anyone wants to buy it, and it's true, I have, right?
Have you
And
really?
it's
Brilliant.
almost, yeah, I have. I genuinely have, right? And like people go, oh my God, where'd you get that from? And it's like, well, actually DVLA, but it's worth a fucking fortune, right? So
How long did you have that on your car? And the next question is, did the police pull you over thinking it was just
I've never
a
been pulled
decor?
over. I've
I
never
was going
been
to say,
pulled over.
surely they just think
Sometimes I
that's a
want to
decor.
drive
I'm
drunk.
sober, don't pull me
I
over.
know. I want them to pull me over so I can go hello. Like,
Yeah.
but no, I've had it 5 years now. The number plate and that, and I see people at a traffic lights reading it, going so, oh yeah, and then they go like nodding their head and that. I go, yep.
What do you get
But
for a number plate like that then? What's that
well, a
going
lot,
for?
mate, because it's mine. So let's get the bid out there. Like, send Stephen James a message, right? Give me a bid. But it's really weird, right? Because I've got to a point now. What you've just said, I don't want it just to be my identity. Do you know what I mean? Like, I genuinely want to just be me, but I can't have my cake and eat it because I've built this up.
Mm.
So I can't really complain about it. But I just I don't just want to be the guy that has stopped drinking and talks about it all the time because there's a lot more layers to me than that.
Yeah, it's when Steve was talking a second ago, and what you've added as well, Dave. I think there's a lot more to it than that. You don't have to be somebody who doesn't drink. I see it in terms of I'm somebody who cares about my health and who wants to be the best version of myself.
Mm,
And again, looking at you on the screen, I can see that you're clearly the best version of yourself. So the fact that that's come about by removing alcohol, I think everyone is going to be a better version of themselves if they don't drink. I don't think anyone can really argue with that. Even if you're only drinking a modest amount, it's still holding you back in some
yeah,
capacity. In some capacity, whether it's just the fact that it's impacting your sleep and the downstream effects of that. But I've never really seen myself as being James who doesn't drink. I'm James who looks after himself.
yeah, I love that. But also, what happens when you stop drinking? You start looking at other areas in your life,
Yeah,
like
absolutely, yeah, 100%.
what you eat and when you go to bed, and like, do you need to up your exercise and your mindfulness? So it all has a
Keystone
knock-on
habit.
effect, doesn't it, of like well-being? Like I don't eat processed meat. Like I don't have I have decaf. I don't have caffeine in all. I've made so many changes in my life now that make me feel better. And
Yeah.
there are days I feel shit. We all do, don't we? Sometimes,
Mm.
a crap night's sleep or whatnot. But you give yourself a better chance, don't you?
100%. Once you pushed over that big domino, and this is a term that a lot of people use, this idea of alcohol being the big domino, it just creates that cascade effect. And
Yeah,
I didn't eat particularly well. I definitely didn't do any exercise, and it all and over the course of the years, it just starts to build up. You once you've nailed the big domino, you're like, right, what's next? Maybe I shall start
yeah,
going to the gym. Maybe I'll get myself in shape. Then you do that, and all of these things are interconnected. And that's try and speak to people about this as much as I possibly can. Is forget about you're losing alcohol because it really is about it's never about alcohol just in isolation.
mm,
It's all one big ecosystem where everything's connected with health and wellness. And mental health that you mentioned earlier is such a huge one as well. Those kind of four pillars of health, and alcohol is just holding all four of them back. And once it's removed, everything can kind of blossom and bloom, in your life in terms of your health and wellness.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's a gift. Not drinking is an absolute gift.
It really is. And like I always say as well, because I'm a bit older than you guys, is like you're never too old to change your life because I was 54 when I stopped drinking, and I could have easily just thought, you know what? What's the point? I've been doing it 40 years, go out in glory. But since stopping drinking, everything has changed, like everything,
Mm,
health, fitness, weight, relationships, like all of it. And I'm genuinely in a really good place in my life now, where I feel my nervous system is regulated. And that was a thing before. Like I was always in fight and flight, like you wake
mm,
up in the morning and you're full of anxiety, you've slept terribly, and you're worried about driving. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, you're like, oh, I know I said I wouldn't drink tonight, but I could have a couple. And you buy enough to
Yeah,
get shit faced. And then you're
yeah.
going round and round and round. And at least I'm stable now. I know what I've said to people, I know what messages I've sent to people. I'm
Yeah.
reliable. Do you know what I mean? Like all these
Mm.
things make your life easier, don't they? And you're not looking over your shoulder all the time.
Can I ask you a personal question, or and we'll edit this out if you're not comfortable with it. In terms of your overall health, and I'm sure you've obviously had checkups and things like that over the last sort of 7 years. Has there been any sort of lasting permanent damage from your drinking, or are you pretty much in absolute tip top health now?
I wouldn't say I'm in tip-top health. I mean, I've had loads of blood tests done. My blood pressure was 121 over 80 3 weeks ago, which is spot on.
Yeah.
My cholesterol's a little bit high, but that can be
Anyone can have that.
hereditary.
Mm,
Do you know
yeah.
what I mean? But everything else is great. I actually paid a hormone specialist to do a load of tests. I had a nervous system test done, and she's worked out that I've got a faulty dopamine receptor. Hence why I think I drank really quickly because I get that huge spike and then it will come down straight away. Where some people can make a glass of wine last an hour and they're quite content. Me, get that in me. I want another one immediately.
Mm,
I'm low in serotonin, so I take something not an antidepressant. I take a herbal supplement to lift that. Low in vitamin D. So I've worked out how my body works and what it needs. So really, I mean, I'm 62 in July, and I feel better now than I did in my 30s, and I mean that as well.
yeah, yeah.
I
Mm.
genuinely
And
do. I feel really my mental health is pretty much on point. I do have the odd bad day, and I can't explain that. I can't
mm,
say to you, oh, well, this happened. I just can have a bad day, but I think that's life, right?
That's life.
that is life,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. But in general, I mean, I've got a big charity walk coming up. It's 23 mile. I don't even think about it, like, and I've climbed 2 mountains. I know it's not all about that, but as a reference for health, I
Mm.
don't struggle with any of that.
I mean, the reason I ask is, so you said you were 52 when you stopped drinking, and clearly,
54.
54. Sorry, and clearly you were drinking, a hell of a lot, and it just sort of shows that it really isn't too late. You can get yourself back to full health
You can,
at
yeah, and
62
unless
just by
there's
stopping.
like scarring of the liver and that, and we
Hmm.
all worry about that when we've, you know, been excessive drinkers. But if there isn't, the liver is an incredible organ that can regenerate really quickly, within weeks.
Mm.
Yeah.
Visceral
It's
fat can go, it's an incredible system.
it's it's also hearing you talk about how you look after your health now, and not just that, how knowledgeable you are about what's going on. Because when we're drinking, we just can't be asked, right? We just can't be
Oh,
asked we want to push it away, we want to push it to one side. And I think it was back last year we had Andy Delderfield on who had been and had he knew something wasn't right, and as a result of that, after stopping drinking, he went and got checked and got early diagnosis of prostate cancer, which he just openly admitted he would never have done
yeah.
had it been for the fact that he'd stopped drinking. You would have put it down to something else always, and it's that I think it's that awareness now. Hearing you talk about, I'm taking this supplement to manage my serotonin levels. The thought of that ever crossing your mind when you drink, it's
Oh,
just
yeah.
not going to happen, is
Yeah,
it?
no,
It's
it's a really good point actually. And I
yeah.
remember I had a men's MOT when I was 50. It
Mm,
was like a voluntary thing. I thought, oh well, I'll go and do that. And they called me in, and I remember for a week thinking, well, I've been found out. My
yeah,
liver's fucked,
yeah,
basically. So I went in and I sat down and I thought, this is going to be the next minute will define my life. And he said, yeah, all okay, but your cholesterol's high. You need to, and it was like 9, right? And now it's 5.1, and they're saying it's still too high. I've like taken 4 off my cholesterol, right? But do you know what happened then? I didn't think, oh my God, I've got a chance that I've got an opportunity here to work. I thought, oh well, my
put
liver's
away.
all right, and carry on drinking.
Yeah,
And it was like an open checkbook for me that night. It's like, oh well, they haven't. My liver's all right. I'm a machine, and even that alone, like, is bizarre thinking. But that's the thinking of an addict. Do you know what I mean? It's not a rational mindset of, okay, right, I'm going to cut out processed meat. I'm going to cut out my breakfast and, like eat more fruit and exercise and stuff. It was none of that. And I think my mindset then was, I'm probably fucked anyway. So I might as well just go out in glory. And I'm being honest there. It's probably I
mm,
thought I didn't have a lot longer to go anyway. So what's the point? And this is what I'm trying to say, don't think like that. Let me be the example that actually at 54, when I was drinking a litre of vodka a night for years, I turned it around and life is totally different now. So it is achievable, but I think you need the right mindset, the right support, and a plan. You know, you've got to have a plan.
Dave, it's been a fascinating conversation. It really has. And you saying there it is possible. Like James said earlier, you are literally the picture of health, and it's if ever there's an example of someone who can show what's like what opportunities are there. Not I'm not going to say later in life, but further on in life to actually it's never too late to kind of make that change and make that decision to really question your relationship with alcohol and what that can bring. And I really want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing that story with us.
Appreciate
Yeah,
it, boys, and keep it up the amazing work you're doing brilliantly. Well done.
yeah, it's been great speaking to you, Dave.
And you, James.
So when people want to find a little bit more about you, obviously
Well,
check
I
it.
said it earlier. Just so,
So for
Sober
Dave,
Dave.
it's dead easy.
Just put it in
It's dead easy.
Google, and,
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can find me. You can
Yeah,
find everything out about me.
yeah.
Dave's marriage breakdown. Dave's like it's everywhere. But yeah, yeah. Reach out, like if you want to chat, whatnot. If it's resonated and that, and it's
Yeah.
sober Dave.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Cheers,
Cheers,
guys.
Dave. Take care of yourself.
Take care.
Cheers.
Bye bye.